Hey everybody, what's happening? Aaron back with you. This is a good podcast. I listen to them while I edit it, and I kind of just reflect back on what we talked about. But this one was a really good one, and I felt like the guests I had on really felt so passionate about the organization he's in. And so my guest today, his name is Dion Gonzales. He is a co-founder of an app called iRelate, like IREL8.org. It is a peer-to-peer based support app for basically any kind of first responder, corporation, just all in general. And I think it clicked with me more because we obviously run with the Hope Line, and it is about connection. And that's really what I feel like this podcast was about today. So I don't want to hype this up anymore because it's a good one, and I'm super excited for you to listen to it. And like I said, it's a great one. I had a bunch of fun listening to it and doing this one. So with that, thank you guys as always for listening. Let's roll. So, all right. So, hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Today on the podcast, I have the pleasure to have Dion Gonzales. He is the co-founder of the app iRelate. Dion, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Aaron. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about iRelate. Tell me what it is, how it got started.
Yeah, iRelate, the elevator pitch, if you will, is iRelate is a peer empowerment platform for mental health.
Okay.
It was started by my co-founder and I, co-founder Jeff Dorchester. Jeff and I have worked together since 2010. We're technology nerds. We've built companies. I've had 3 companies built and sold those. My last one, Jeff came along with me. We sold that in 2015. And we co-founded a payment processing and marketing automation company. Marketing automation software is what I built before. So
okay,
we really were trying to figure out what do we want to do. And so we left that company in 2017, and we were thinking of all these different data analytics plays and things of that nature. One night, Jeff calls me and says, "Hey, you don't know this about me, but I'm living with depression." I had no idea. Like I said, we have worked together since 2010. We're friends. We're business partners. And I had no idea. I did know that he had a physical issue with his heart. He was an AFib for about 84 hours.
Wow.
And didn't have a stroke or anything like that, but the physical ramifications were he couldn't really walk too far without stopping. And the anxiety that he had with all the meds and everything they put him on started really screwing with his brain, right?
Right.
At the same time that he was dealing with the mental aspects of that, we had a suicide scare in our household. We have 4 kids.
Oh, my God.
And I wasn't talking to him about it. Right.
Yeah.
So it was really timely when he called and called us. It's pretty seminal because we always text. Right. And so he called me tonight and just said, "Hey, I'm living with depression." And my first, before he even got there, he said, "Hey, I have an idea for our next company." And I said, "I can't talk right now. I'm dealing with the family crisis."
Yeah.
He said, "All right, well, call me back." So I did. And then he told me that he was living with depression. And my first response was, "Jeff, why didn't you tell me? We're friends. We're business partners. You can tell me anything, dude. Just open up." And it was all the classic things that people say. It's not easy to talk about. I thought you'd think less of me.
Right.
You can only say this so often before people start looking down upon you.
Yeah.
There's a stigma associated with it. And he pretty much flipped the script on me at that point and just said, "Hey, I know you're dealing with some stuff too. Have you told me everything?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And he said, "Well, why not?" And I said, "It's the exact same reasons you just said." You can literally rewind what you said, play it back, and that's the exact same reason. So the light bulb went on, and Jeff and I are in a car group on Facebook called Alpha Euros, just a bunch of guys and gals that drive European cars and like to nerd it up and talk about those, really. Yeah. And there was a guy on there. I knew who Jeff was talking about, but the guy was pretty verbal. And apparently one night, this guy just said, "Hey, see you later, world. I'm out of here."
Oh, my God.
So Jeff reached out to him. Didn't know him. outside of being on this car group on Facebook Messenger and just said, hey, you know, what's going on? Had a dialogue with him and talked him down really over the course of about a week or two. This gentleman finally said, hey, thank you for reaching out. I'm good, but I do want you to know you saved me from killing myself again.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And Jeff said, well, what do you mean again? And he said, well, about a year ago, I was spiraling. My wife and I were struggling, and I called the suicide hotline, suicide prevention hotline, and just looking for some help. He said, This is what he said. He goes, I got a young scripted punk on the end of the phone. So I set the phone down. Still, the other, you know, the guy that answered the phone is still on the other side of the phone.
Right.
Set the phone down, put a gun to his head and shot himself. So
wow.
His wife heard it. Of course, the guy that answered the phone of the suicide prevention hotline heard it, and they revived him and saved him. So he was spiraling again. When Jeff reached out to him, again, complete stranger, and was really able to make an impact, not being clinical, just by relating to him, hence the name I Relate.
Yeah.
And so the guy said, hey, I'm good to go, you know. And so when Jeff told me about the concept, so, well, let me sleep on it. And so the next morning I was training at my MMA gym, and my main trainer, who's a good friend of mine, asked me what I was going to go build. And I said, hey, what do you think about this concept? And I told him the concept of an anonymous peer-to-peer platform where you can talk to people that have been there, done that.
Yeah.
No judgment, no stigma. You don't have to worry about being demoted, you know, or anything like that. And he said, I love it. You should go talk to a good friend of mine who's the executive director of the Special Forces Foundation. So I did, and it was immediate. And he just said, we need this. I lose guys to suicide, obviously. I lose them to any number of mental health issues, addiction, incarceration, all of these things, because these are the toughest of the toughest guys that are out there as Green Berets, Navy SEALs, you know, being, you know, in special forces. They don't talk about these things. They only will talk about it with their tribe.
Yeah.
They won't talk to their commanding officer because they're afraid they're going to lose their weapon. They certainly don't go to the VA for the same reason.
Yep.
And so then we just started realizing that there's this real need. We're not clinical. So we just sit in the space where somebody says, I'm really struggling and I wish I could talk to somebody who understands what I've gone through.
Yeah.
We sit perfectly right there. Now, we also work with about 5,500 clinicians throughout the United States,
Yeah.
And we can refer those folks. And so the populations that we started serving, obviously, emergency responders. We have an app that we've built for our partner, All Clear Foundation, who is graciously sponsored and funded in large part by Global Medical Response, is the largest ambulance company in the world.
Yeah.
And we built responder related specifically for emergency responders. And, you know, with COVID and the protests and all the disasters that are happening with disaster response right now, our frontline workers, emergency responders, and hospital, you know, frontline workers are taxed more than ever. So, there's just a huge need for people to be able to connect on a peer level. And so that was how the app started.
Wow. You know, that there's so much to unload there, and it's your organization kind of falls right in line with what we do at the center. So we're known for a thing called the Hope Line, which is a text-based service. So it's very, very similar. However, yours is peer-to-peer, which I think is fantastic, because I was telling you before the podcast started, I was a police officer, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, if I would have had this outlet, not necessarily the Hope Line, but if I would have had another officer that I could just say, like, or even like a first responder, to say, this is what I'm going through. I don't know how to deal with it. I wonder if that would have changed a lot of outcomes in my career. But, you know, obviously that's all hindsight, and I'm much better because I deal with anxiety and depression and PTSD from that job.
I'm sure.
And I could totally see the need for having the peer-to-peer support. Now, and I don't know if you said anything or not before. Is it like text-based? Is it phone call-based? How exactly does it go?
Yeah, it's a good question. So right now it's purely app-based. So
okay, sure, yeah, my fault, yeah.
That being said, actually, it's a really good question, because we just we work very tightly with Microsoft. Microsoft came in very early and said, we love what you guys are doing, and have since been tremendous partners in refactoring the app for us and doing a number of things. Most recently, a group of volunteer developers in what's called a Hack for Good project, which literally was last week, came through and helped develop a proof of concept for a patent that we have behind anonymous texting as well.
Yeah.
So we're going to fold that into the app as well, so that you have the ability to text anonymously, not with your actual mobile phone number, but with what masked phone number.
Like a ghost one or something?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
and we provision all of that in the app, and we're not containing any PII in the app or anything like that. So it's, in terms of compliance mandates and things of that nature, we're pretty tightly covered there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's app, and then very soon will be SMS text as well. But the anonymity piece is absolutely critical. And so everything we do is along the line of making sure that the anonymity is protected.
Yeah, and that's a very, very, very important, because one, and you alluded to it, you're in your tribe, you're a commanding officer, and somebody comes to you saying, you know what, I'm having some suicidal thoughts, I'm having some depression thoughts. You immediately, if you're in that position, go, am I now responsible for you if you do something? What can I do? So having that anonymity, thank you. Having the anonymity to say, this is what's going on, having a platform to really give that is so important. It's so vital. And I don't think people see that.
I think you're 100% correct. We are starting to see it now with the pandemic more and more. There's more studies. There's a lot of evidence behind the effectiveness of peer-based supports in conjunction with clinicians and professionals. But it's interesting. We kicked off formally in 2018. I would say over the past 6 months, we've seen more studies about evidence-based peer support popping up than we have, previous to in the past 2 years.
Right.
And I'm seeing more and more of them. So I think the awareness is certainly there. But I also believe that awareness is only one part of the solution.
Right.
The real key is in the action behind the awareness.
Yep.
So we have, Suicide Prevention Week and awareness behind that, mental health awareness. And so I'm a big proponent of saying it's great that we've got the awareness piece behind all of this, but let's drive action, because that action has to be meaningful, and that's where we're going to see the real results.
How true that is. You see so many organizations say, yeah, we raise awareness, we do it, but what are you doing? That's the most important thing. What are you actually doing? And they can't produce that result. I'm going off into a tangent here, because there's so many organizations. We're a smaller based suicide awareness mental health organization. We're based in Kaukauna, Wisconsin, which, if you know, are you familiar with Wisconsin at all?
I know the Green Bay Packers.
Okay. So we're about 20 minutes south of Green Bay is where we're kind of located. And we're a smaller base or whatever. And we have all these different organizations around us that get all of this massive funding, yet we're the ones that are doing all the legwork to it, and we get nothing from it. That's so important to have that saying, look, I do this, but here's the results to show you that I'm actually using this and doing something. So I totally love that you guys have that stance.
To me, in my old world of marketing automation, I would always look at the analytics and the return on investment.
Yeah.
I used to call things a lot of pay and pray advertising, where people would pay for things and pray people would come in, and they weren't measuring their effectiveness. Digital marketing is a little bit more precise, but to a very large extent, I feel like the awareness campaigns are a lot like pay and pray advertising. You're saying everybody become aware of it, and they believe that's the end all be all. That's the final result. There's so much more work to be done behind that.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the action that you take behind that awareness that really determines whether the impact is positive, negative, and then you learn from the negative ones and hopefully drive more positive impact. So that's what we're always looking to do. We've partnered with the University of Colorado Anschutz National Mental Health Innovation Center as well.
Yeah.
And that's really important to us, because we're a technology platform, but part of what they're doing for us is doing evidence-based peer studies with various different populations, so that the university is doing it. We, of course, will be able to leverage those results, but really have tangible evidence-based peer support data to support the product that we're building out there.
That,
On
yeah.
top of that, one of the questions that a lot of people have asked is, what type of training do you provide for peer support? And again, we don't. We're a technology provider. I would say it's kind of like, does Facebook train you to how to go on their forum and post?
Yeah.
Well, intuitively, yes, but they're not moderating, so to speak.
Exactly.
Not doing much of a job of it. That's a whole different Oprah show. We don't go down that track. But my point is that they're also building out a peer curriculum for those individuals that would like to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And that's outside of us. But those are things that we're looking at. The awareness driving the action, and making that action then something meaningful for people to utilize. Because our whole goal, and I know this sounds cliche, but it really is to make the world a better place and to stop the stigma with mental health. It really is. We should be able to talk about mental health the same way I talked about my last ACL surgery.
Right. I have said that so many times on different podcasts where, why is it so acceptable to say to somebody, yeah, I was in the hospital for such and such, which is a physical issue. But if I said to you, hey, Dion, I feel really depressed right now. All of a sudden, your mindset switches to, ooh, hold on a sec here. What's going on? Like, why? It's so stigmatic. And I love that, out of everybody I've ever talked to, all organizations, their goal is to break this stigma. And that's super important. It's not, it should not be a horrible thing or like a gut-wrenching thing to tell somebody that, and I think it's so important that I don't even say it's cliche. I think it's exactly what we need to be doing, is saying, look, you have depression, you have PTSD, you have bipolar, whatever you have, it's okay. It doesn't make you less of a human being.
That's right. In fact, it makes you more human.
Bingo.
Because
yes.
we can all relate. I mean, no pun intended, but we can.
All right. No, exactly.
We see it in the app, and we see these conversations in the app, both on Responder Relate and I Relate, where somebody will very timidly say something. This is the first time I've said something or told my story.
Yeah.
I feel so good about it. And then invariably you see other members saying, I went through something similar, or I'm so glad you're here. This is the path that I've went down. And many times they'll get to the point where they say, yeah, you know what really actually did help me at this particular point was I had to talk to a professional. So here's the questions that I was ready to go to my professional with. So it's really this, we had a notion, it was somewhat, I think we're a little naive trying to think we could build this community where people would help and heal one another, but we really have so far. And it's just been tremendous.
But that's exactly it, though, because vulnerability and being open about what specifically somebody went through is only going to encourage other people to do the same.
That's right.
And especially the fact that it's a peer-to-peer one, I think that makes it even more valuable. And I talk with my boss about this all the time, saying like, look, I have a associate's degree in criminal justice. That's what I have.
Yep.
But I have literally I have a master's degree in life experience because of my job. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's all relative. And I really think that's so important, because if I was to go to a therapist and say, look, I am dealing with this issue right now, and the therapist could say, yeah, they could have a PhD, you could have master, whatever you have, but they have no empathy or life experience to back it up with. You're giving me a book answer, and I don't want that. I'm not going to relate to that. No pun intended,
Yeah, no, I mean, with our situation where we had the suicide scare in our house, we went through the family counseling route. And I was looking towards the counselor to really be able to drive the conversation in a meaningful way that would help us heal. And I understand that they're trying to understand the family dynamic and all the different personalities, but it all felt very scripted and book answer to us.
Right.
And so my son that was going through the challenges, but we're still going through the challenges. I deal with the anxiety every single day, and I know the rest of my family does as well.
Right.
But when we were building out the the minimum viable product of this app, I asked him, I think he was probably 14, 15 at the time, would an app like this have been useful to you,
Yeah.
within your population, a younger group, younger kids in high school? And he said, absolutely. I'm not going to be posting things about what I was feeling on Snapchat
No.
or Instagram or anything like that. I'm certainly not talking to my buddies about it. It's not something you want to say, right? That I'm feeling all this way. Even more stigma, right? When you're in high school.
Yeah.
I mean, you got cliche or you have click upon click in high school. So that's right. I mean, being able to have that safe place to land, talk, know that even if somebody doesn't completely relate to you, somebody else will, and knowing you're not alone, I think are so critical to the mental health and mental wellness for all of us. And there's no borders behind this. There's nobody that's immune to it. It doesn't,
Right.
Mental health doesn't discriminate based on socioeconomic status or the color of your skin.
Right.
Although, access to different tools is hardly, that's a very difficult topic, and there's different access levels based on populations and socioeconomic status. But mental health impacts everybody.
Yeah.
One of the stats out there that 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 of us will be impacted any given year by mental health. I honestly, Aaron, I hate that statistic. And I'll tell you why.
I think I know why, but yes, please say it. Please say it.
Exclusionary. It's
yes.
saying, I would look at that and go, okay, well, this year I'm not the 1 in 4, not the 1 in 5, so I'm doing great. But the fact of the matter is that 5 in 5 are impacted.
Yes.
So if I'm struggling, I promise you, my wife and my 4 kids are feeling the impacts.
Absolutely. I cannot tell you how much I agree with that, because I've said on previous podcasts, I deal with those issues. I know my wife is impacted by it. I 100% know that.
Sure.
We have the arguments, we have the disagreements, and we always know this could just be an anxiety thing. This is just an anxiety thought, and it just spirals out of control. So I totally agree with you on that. I think it's way higher than what people realize. I don't think it's necessarily just, okay, physically, yes, I'm that 1 in 5 that has the issue. No, my parents are now affected by it because they understand what I go through. My sister, my mom, or my cousins, everybody. But it's so important that it becomes less stigmatic, because I can tell you from firsthand experience, telling somebody that and having the negative reaction that they'll give you of like, "Ooh, I don't know about this," it makes it even worse.
Right.
So I know I kind of alluded to it before, but it's so important to just be okay with that and be normal about it, instead of being so, oh, we have to fix this issue. No, it's not just an overnight fix. It takes a long time. And so I think it's just fantastic that you also recognize that, and especially with your son. I don't know if you deal with any of those issues yourself, but I think it's just great that you are so supportive of him of that.
Yeah, I think I have my own subset of issues that I deal with behind the anxiety.
Right.
It was there before any of this happened, with the family, but I think it's always been there. I don't sleep well. My mind is always racing, and there's a number of probably reasons behind that. And there's a lot of things that I do to try to mitigate that, meditation and exercise and all of these other things. But I think everybody carries with them a certain amount of mental challenge that they either recognize and become vulnerable and then put themselves in a place to recognize and heal from it, or to learn more from it to get to a place to heal. Or it's the opposite, where we just continue to bury it and hide it. And that's the worst thing we can do.
How true that is. How true that is. I mean,
it's hard as hell, right? Nobody wants to come out and say these things and make themselves vulnerable because of that stigma. But until we all do it, and I love seeing a lot of the professional athletes. We work with a number of former professional athletes that have come out and verbalized it, like Theo Fleury talking about trauma. And of course, you see Michael Phelps pretty vocal about or the anxiety, and you're thinking like, wow, one of the most decorated Olympian out there, probably the best swimmer of all time, and he goes through anxiety and depression. Wow,
Right.
we need more of that across all walks of life, so that people do realize I'm not crazy.
Right.
It's normal to feel certain or have challenges, and it's even better for me if I'm talking about it and getting it out there, because I'm going to help myself, and I bet I'm going to help somebody else too.
That's the challenge with it, because it always feels like you're rolling the ball uphill, and it's never ever a downhill where people say yes, it's accepted. But you're right. The more that people come out with it, the more that people are vulnerable, especially more public figures. I think that also will play a major role in its destigmatization of what it is. And I think your app, just from what I've read about it, from talking with you, I think it's so needed. And I'm so happy that you created something that is going to affect so many people in a very positive way. And I think I think you have to be just ecstatic for doing something like that.
It's rewarding on many levels. It's also maddening on other levels.
Yeah.
Because as an entrepreneur, you see the end state of where you would like it to be in 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm deliberately, or maybe not deliberately, but habitually impatient with those types of things.
As everybody usually is.
Yeah, you know? Yeah. So I think that's just part of who we are as a society, at least here in the U.S. But I will tell you that I've never gone through an app and read stories where reading complete strangers' comments and their stories and them being so open would choke you up on a nightly basis.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens a lot where I'll just be reading this and I'm thinking, wow, how profound. And thinking of my story and my family story compared to some of the stories that have been shared within the app, and people have found, hope and healing with one another. It's mind-blowing in many ways. It makes you appreciative on many levels. Mm-hmm. But it also opens up your heart and your mind to realize that, gosh, if we can get more people using this and talking about it, we're just helping everybody normalize this.
Yeah.
So the more people we can have, the greater the power of the community becomes. And we have different other some communities want exclusive access in the app, like the Special Forces Foundation. They get that, right? Yeah. So they have an exclusive area. We had Respond and Relate has their own app.
Yep.
But they all can still participate in what I call the global iRelate platform. Mm-hmm. So that everybody that we bring on, every channel partner or community that we bring on, can have their own special section. We work with a group that that works behind the scenes in the entertainment and the acting world. So they do the lighting and the costumes, and they're under a tremendous amount of pressure.
Right.
They have their own special section in the app, but they can also go out to the general population and talk to other people in the app. So it's all this community where I think social media was intended to go in the early days.
Yeah.
But then it took an ugly turn to become ad-driven and all of these things. We don't put ads in the app. We don't sell data.
Right.
Any of that, right? So that's what we're trying to build. And we've got that, but I would like to see it be a little bit further ahead.
Right. Well, of course. So let me.
That'll never end.
It never will. It never will. So let me pose a hypothetical scenario to you. I am Tom Jones, not the singer.
The singer.
Not the singer. Yeah. I'm Tom Jones. I work at a factory on the line. I work 12-hour days. I am just driven to the bone with work. I'm frustrated. I come home. I can't sleep. I do all this stuff. I go to this app. I listen to this podcast, shameless plug. I listen to this podcast and I say, you know what? I'll download this app. When I download it to my phone, what are the steps? What happens? Kind of explain that to everybody.
Yeah. So number one, again, as I mentioned, anonymity is first and foremost part of the functional part of the app, right? Mm-hmm. So they'll download the app. We do ask for an email address. It has to be a real email address so that we know that there's a person and not a spammer or bot behind it.
Right.
But it could be mickeymouse@gmail.com for all we care.
Right.
that's really it. You put your email address in, you create your password,
Yep.
and you're automatically joined into the app. We have a zero tolerance policy for any type of bullying or anything like that. We do allow profanity because it's raw and it's real.
Yep.
Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
And we also say, put the disclaimers, of course, if you're going through crisis, call 911. This is not
you have to do that. Yeah.
Once you do that, you're automatically joined into what we call the global room, where you can start talking with people. I should mention too, Aaron, the app is in 54 languages in real time. So we've done that as well.
You're just jumping ahead to my next question too.
Yeah. So I think we've mapped it out. We could cover about 6.8 billion people worldwide.
Wow.
So, a lot more than coronavirus is impacting us.
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
So you go in the app, and then there's a number of categories based on what pertains to you. So it could be post-traumatic stress. It could be OCD. It could be depression. It could be addiction. We have various different categories. You simply join those rooms and start talking to other peers. You also have the ability to form groups. So think of like a virtual anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous in AA, where you can friend somebody in the app and say, hey, I want to have this group or this forum where we can go in at certain times of days, and it's going to be the 10 of us or 12 of us. So you invite those folks, and that's a little bit more of an intimate conversation.
Right. So are you able to direct message people in the app?
You can. There's the friending capability, so you can friend somebody and then send messages to that specific individual as well. Okay. And they'll be of course notified of the conversation, and they can go in there and chat. Of course. One thing that's really important to point out, because people say, how can you be anonymous if you're getting an email address? And that's a great question. The way that our infrastructure is structured, Microsoft has built this out, co-developed this, the whole platform with us, is that when you register and you get your email address, that sits in in one part of our architecture. All conversational data and IDs or anything like that are in a completely different part of our database. So the database doesn't even really talk to the identification layer. Right. So that's really important for people to understand, so that they know that their data is protected. And we work with a number of organizations that ask about HIPAA compliance and things of that nature. So it's important for those pieces to be pointed out. So you say HIPAA compliance, and this is maybe just my own curiosity. Since this is peer-to-peer, it's not necessarily a clinician thing, or it's not a therapist thing. They're not giving them what they should do. It's just more, again, based on life experience. That's right. Right. Yeah. And we're not storing any personal health information or anything like that either anyway. So Exactly. And I think that's a great platform to go off of, because it gives people that like kind of safety and security to say, look, I am going to be vulnerable to you, but I don't want this coming back to me. And all of a sudden I have cops at my door saying, wait, you thought about killing yourself last night. Let's talk about that. I don't want that. I want exactly what you're doing. I think that's great. I think that's, and just so my listeners have an idea of it. You're not, this is there like a subscription to this? Is it just free? Or I guess I'm kind of curious about that. Yeah. So it is a fee-based app. It's cheap. It's 99 cents per month per subscriber. Yeah. We work with a number of channel partners or large organizations that will either provide it to those they serve or their constituents, or they'll just promote it. Mm-hmm. And again, as I mentioned, Aaron, we're a for-profit, though we do work with a lot of nonprofits. Yeah. So we don't do ads, right? So the way for us to keep our lights on and pay our server costs and data costs and things of that nature is to charge for the app. But that also maintains the integrity of the app. We don't have trolls in the app. Trolls don't pay to troll. Like free platforms. Go look at Facebook, Reddit. Like Twitter. I mean, there's I get that's a great way to say it. Yeah. Trolls don't pay. They don't. Trolls are frugal, I guess. Exactly. So that's part of it. Again, we don't do ads, and we don't sell the data.
Yeah.
Data is not meant to be monetized. We will look at data in terms of understanding what the trends are so that we can make sure that we are adjusting the app and the relevance of the different rooms based on current trends. So, for example, we have a COVID room.
Yeah.
And we have a COVID mitigation plan where, it's peer triage, which I'm in Colorado. The state of Colorado immediately knew that we needed some sort of peer triage to help with the crisis that we're falling under. There's just not enough clinicians and frontline workers to handle all the demand. And as cases are spiking again, that becomes very important. And care escalation is also part of the offering that we've got within the platform. So appropriate care escalation, when a peer can say, this is what I've done, especially as it relates to COVID. Maybe I went and got tested. I came back positive. Or, you see a lot of questions that are, here's the symptoms that I have, and there's so many symptoms of COVID now. When do I go to the doctor? Because the system's it's becoming overburdened again. When do I go? And you'll see conversations in there. Well, I went at this particular time. Or if you're experiencing this, then you need to go. And if not, then maybe wait it out. Those types of things. So that peer-to-peer interaction, completely anonymous, helps people talk with one another, open up, be honest, and have this meaningful dialogue. So we do look at those trends from a data perspective.
But no matter how you say it, no matter what you say, I think it's so beneficial to have it, because life does not get easier by any means, and people don't have sometimes the necessary means to go to a therapist every week, to go to, a meeting or anything like that. So in retrospect, 99 cents a month is nothing.
No,
I really find that to be extremely helpful for people. And especially since you guys monitor it, you base it off of the trends of what's really happening, i.e. coronavirus now. But also, like when you were talking about that, I just read a statistic the other day that said, suicides are up almost 300%.
Yeah.
From what they normally are. I mean, think about that. There's three times as much of people that don't have a resource or feel like they don't have hope or an outlet to have something just as simple but effective as what you provide. I think is fantastic.
Yeah, the statistics are, I think we're starting to see the beginning of the mental health impact of COVID now.
Yeah.
Saw a statistic, we posted it on our LinkedIn and Instagram yesterday, and also Twitter, that in the third week of July of this year, so just a few short weeks ago, a third of American adults were dealing with depression.
Yeah.
That number a year ago was 6.6%.
Unreal.
So you're looking at almost a 500% increase in the number of adults in the United States that are showing depressive symptoms as a result of the virus.
Yeah.
We're not certainly through this by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
So just imagine what it could look like in another 6 months to a year, when the economic fallout really starts taking hold beyond what it's already doing.
You talk about that. You talk about, in 6 months, talk about when kids go back to school, talk about the kids going to college for their first time. This is all they know now.
Right.
How do you, you and I, we went to college, we had the college experience, we did this or whatever.
Absolutely.
They don't get that. And so how are they supposed to feel? That's so, it almost seems unfair, and you feel guilty that you've experienced it. But at the same time, to recognize that they are going through something like this, I think is very valuable.
Yeah. And parents are dealing with this across the nation and the world, right? 2 of our kids are still in elementary school, and it's very much up in the air whether they're going to do classroom, hybrid, and online, or just go straight online. And so my younger children, 2 daughters, are like, we want to go back to school and we miss our friends. I totally get it.
Yeah.
I know you do, and I want you to have that experience. But I also want you to have some level of consistency, and I'm concerned that when you go back into school with the way the cases are going right now, it's only a matter of time before somebody tests positive, and then the school has to take a proper actions,
Yep.
closing down the school,
Yep.
and you're doing online learning anyway. So then the education is disrupted versus just going online, which is not the most beneficial in my
No.
view in terms of, socialization and that friend interaction.
Yep.
And I'm certainly all parents are struggling with this.
Oh, yeah.
Let alone having, one parent or single parents as an example, that would be unfathomable to me how they would have to deal with that, maintain 2 jobs or a job to take care of their children, and then also play tutor at home.
Right. And you think about, especially like you said, your children, the elementary age, how vital is it for that social interaction? How vital is that to learn that just learning how to be empathetic, considerate to people. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, guess what? You're going to go home. You're going to learn what we would learn online by yourself or with your parents or whatever. This is, and I hate saying this because it's so oversaid now, but this is an unknown time. We don't know what's going to happen in 6 months, a year.
No.
But honestly, I think as long as people are aware that they're not alone dealing with this, there is hope. There is light at the end of it. It might be a while, but it doesn't mean that it's completely over. So I think it's just, I can't tell you enough how much I think what you're doing is so important. And I was always humble when somebody would say, oh, thank you so much for what you do. But at the same time, I didn't recognize it until I was out of it, how important and valuable that was to them. So I think that you provide a platform that is so needed. It is phenomenal. And I will say that over and over and over because it is.
Thank you.
Of course.
Please do. We want the more people we have in it, the better it becomes for all of us.
Absolutely. It really is. And I don't want to take up too much of your time, Dion, here. But so if people want to download the app, they want to learn more about your organization, learn about iRelate, how do they do that?
We're everywhere. Microsoft has been gracious enough to write several stories about us. So if you Google Microsoft and iRelate, you'll find some things. Mm-hmm. Of course, you can visit us at irelate.org. That's IREL, the number 8.org. We're on Instagram. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, all under irelate.org. And so they can pretty much find us in any one of those channels.
Fantastic. And obviously you're in the Apple Store, the Google Play Store.
We're in both Apple and Google Play, ready today, both with Responder Relate and iRelate. The community continues to grow. And again, the more people that are joining and active in the app, the stronger we all become as a community. So
I love it. I really, really do. And Dion, so I know I told you I don't really do this as an interview style podcast. I never do, sure. But I do ask one question to all my guests, and you can take this however you want. It's totally, there's no filter.
Sounds like a loaded one, Aaron.
It's not. Don't worry. What's your advice for anybody that's ever been in your situation or has resonated with something you've said today?
Well, that's a big one, right?
I know.
I think for me, just based on my personality type, anybody that's been in this situation, you just keep going, right? You keep fighting. You keep doing positive things. If you dwell too much on the problem versus focus on the solution, you never get out of it. So Keep fighting, focus on that solution. And it's tough as an entrepreneur too. That's a whole different subset of mental health.
Right.
We've been very fortunate in many, many ways, but it's difficult sometimes as an entrepreneur to say, man, this has been a hard day or a hard week or a hard couple months. So that resiliency, which obviously, given your background, is so critical with emergency responders.
Yes.
Having that resiliency to know you're not alone, because you're not, is critical, but you need that community to be able to reach out to. So keep going, use your community, do things that are good for yourself. Don't beat yourself up if you're going out and having beers or whatever, but also know that you need to go back and take care of yourself in a real meaningful way. So that's what I would say.
That's extremely important. And I always end, like when I do the podcast, I always end it at the end. Like when I do my little outro, I always say, like, you're loved and you are important. And remember, you're not alone. I say that every single time because it's so true. And everybody deals with it. And it's just amazing to have have an app that you can connect with somebody that really does understand, that is going through that as well. So, but no, I appreciate you coming on the podcast today, Dion. And like I said, I definitely think it's a valuable thing, and make sure that you check it out if you haven't. So no, I appreciate it so much, Dion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again, Dion, for coming on the podcast. I really do feel strongly about his organization. I think the app is needed more than ever now because of coronavirus. And it's just a hard time because we obviously don't know what's happening anymore. I mean, you can get all the information from the news, but it feels so jaded left and right. It's just tough to see it. And why do I always keep going back to the same premise of just be kind? That's always just been the stance. So it was just a really good talk with Dion. So again, Dion, thank you so much. And if you haven't, please check out on the Apple Play or Apple Store or Google Play Store, I Relate. So thank you again, Dion. Appreciate it. Did you like today's podcast? I really did, if you couldn't tell from the intro. If you did, like it, share, subscribe, do whatever. It helps the podcast. I'm still looking for those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcast. I saw somebody did it, but I don't know who it is, obviously. So like it, share it, subscribe, follow, whatever platform you're on. It does help the podcast. Even if you do a download and not listen to it, it helps us. We need that support. We need you to keep being invested in what we're producing for you. So please take care of that. Do that. It does help us. Visit us on our social pages: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, Discord. All are at Center for Suicide Awareness in Kaukauna, Wisconsin. Obviously, Twitch is a new one that we do, but we do stream we do stream throughout the week for, just raising awareness for suicide prevention and mental health. And it's just another simple way for us to fundraise during the COVID pandemic. Also, we have our Discord. You can click it on the show notes down below. Click on the Discord. It's really, really good to have a community that is backed around mental health and suicide prevention. So check them out. It's worth it. Obviously, we promote the Hope Line. And if you haven't heard about the Hope Line, you clearly haven't listened to our podcasts. So Center for Suicide Awareness created the Hope Line. It's a text-based emotional support service that is brought to somebody free of charge. And it's just based on simple as a text message. All you have to do is text Hope Line to 741-741, and you'll be connected to a trained counselor to talk about those issues that you're facing day in and day out. Whether it's a marriage issue, whether it's a financial issue, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, it's an issue that's big to you. We provide this service to help you. Hope Line, 741-741. And if you don't need it, maybe somebody else does. Refer it to them because it's super important. If you have any questions, comments, concerns about the podcast, please email me. It's Aaron, Aaron, at centerforsuicideawareness.org. It will come directly to me. I will respond to you. I am very good at doing that. I appreciate you as the listener. So that's why I will do everything I can to give back to you ASAP, whatever. So everybody, I really appreciate you listening and really just giving me your feedback, giving me a purpose to continue to do this each week, because I really do enjoy it. Coming from a background in law enforcement to come to something like this, it's been a completely different ride for me. And I didn't know how it was going to turn out. I didn't know exactly what it was going to be like, but I found out that I really enjoy this and that this is probably a calling or a passion for me. So I'm very happy that I get to do this every week. But so as always, everybody, be kind to one another. Be kind. You don't know what anyone is going through, so just be kind. We're all in this together. You are loved and you are important. And remember, you are not alone. Take care, everybody. Bye.